All right, folks, thanks for joining us tonight. It's Wednesday, the 17th of February, and this is a part of our community conversations. All right, folks, thanks. Different devices going on right now, excuse me. This series has been sponsored by NAACP Pasadena branch, Indalon, the Community Clergy Coalition, as well as CCOP. And I'll introduce myself to some of you and the others I know. My name is James Farr, and I've been moderating these discussions as we've kind of moved around to different parks, different park areas. We've invited community stakeholders to participate in this conversation. I'd like to let you know that joining us on these conversations are Pasadena Police Department. We've asked them to listen so that they can learn more about what exactly the community is saying, how they're feeling. And so they won't be able to respond, but you're more than welcome to, share what your truths are, what your stories are, what your questions are. We have a panel today consisting of Brandon, Lamar, and Esprit, and we'll talk with them a little bit, and then we'll open up our dialogue today for you. So if you'd like to come on camera and ask a question, that's fine. Just indicate that in the chat or raise your hand. Once we get to that portion, Lisa will be facilitating that part, and she'll bring you in on camera. These conversations are likely to be spirited. They're likely to be high charged. We just ask that we don't have to all agree, but you respect other people's positions, and we invite you guys all to share. And then I just want to send a hello to and thank you to Flo, who has organized this. Flo, did you want to come on and say something before we get started?
Sorry, no, you good. Let's start.
Okay. So I want to welcome our first two panelists here into this conversation. We have Brandon Lamarr as well as Esprit. So I'm going to start out with you, Brandon. And as we know tonight, we're centralizing the conversation around the La Pintoresca Park and that particular community. There's some things that are kind of overlapping between communities, but I want to start with you, Brandon, and kind of for context for those that may not know, what was La Pintoresca to you, like as a young person in the community, and kind of where is it right now?
All right. Okay. Good evening, everyone. As stated, my name is Brandon Lamarr. I'm a lifelong Pasadenian, as you would call it. Born and raised here all of my life. Actually been a part of probably every youth program, either been a part of it or worked it that you can think about that has to do with the city of Pasadena. So been invested here for a minute. When it comes to La Pintoresca Park, if you know Northwest Pasadena, Jackie Robinson and La Pintoresca Park was like the live parks that you can go to. And so with La Pintoresca having the basketball courts and the skateboard park, and then a couple of years later, they added a water station where kids can cool down during the summer. But when I was going to La Pintoresca Park, it was actually before they actually built the team center. And it was a lot of intertwined between La Pintoresca Park and La Pintoresca Library. You didn't go to the park without going to the library. I mean, everybody who went to the park went to the library. And then you can't mention La Pintoresca Park either without mentioning Alkebalon Culture Center, because Alkebalon Culture Center was right in the middle of it as well, right next door. And so there was a lot of things that was intertwined. Alkebalon Culture Center had after school programs. They had summer programs for the young people. They had a male chorus choir, which was before my time. But there's a whole lot of things that
like the kids. as a young person, what connected you to all of those things? Because I'm constantly hearing that there's a gap maybe in the teen center or even El Cabulon and even the library where, young people are kind of slipping through the cracks. So what was the connector? Why was that important for you?
I mean,
when you were young and coming up?
I mean, let's be honest. When I was young, and it was long ago because I'm a '90s kid, and so when I was growing up, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have internet, we didn't have Wi-Fi, and so we spent a lot of our times outside. We played basketball outside, football outside, tag outside. We played football in the middle of the street, and sometimes it was tackle in the middle of the street. And so nowadays we barely even see kids actually playing outside, period. Because they're so into their games and stuff. But when I was growing up as a kid, there was a lot of interaction with park and recreation. There was a lot of interaction with the police department. For an example, police actually stopping and saying, "How you doing? Playing football with us, playing basketball with us." I remember a guy named Officer Saunders. He's probably still with the police department as well. But he would literally spend time with us, talking to us. Rodney Wallace, of course, everybody knows him. And the list goes on and on and on. And so we were available in the community. We were a part of it. The activities that was happening at the park, they was there. I used to be a part of the Pasadena Youth Council. And before there was a teen center, we were the ones who was coming up with the activities and with the ambassadors coming up with the activities for the teen center. And so there's a lot of history with La Pintoresca Park when it comes to the city, when it comes to the parks, when it comes to family. And so, even it's still this. Go ahead, James.
You said, because I want to go back to something you just said, like there was a different interaction or contact with like the police,
right?
And how they interacted with kids in the park. Why and how did that make a difference between the relationship between kids then, versus what we're seeing now?
I mean, let's be honest, the culture of policing has changed, right? We hear a lot of officers now saying that we can't do this and we can't do that because we're afraid or we're scared for our lives, right? When I was a kid, officers I'm not going to say that they weren't scared because I didn't hear it come out their mouths, but officers were not only approachable, but they approached you as well. And so you have people like I said, Officer Sanders, Officer Rodney. You have people like Daryl Qualls that wasn't afraid to approach the people. But let's even cross lines with Altadena. Let's go to the sheriff's department with Deputy Sheriff Eric Estrada, who's not afraid to approach people. And I think that's the difference. Is that now, instead of approaching people because they fit a description, or instead of approaching somebody because you got a call about something that just happened and they look like they did it or whatever the case may be, they were approaching to connect with you. They were approaching to throw the basketball with you. They was approaching to know your name. They was approaching you to build community and to build trust. And so that's the difference between now and then. Even some stuff that's been happening recently, and me and a couple of other people who have been at the park, it's a different culture. You have officers.
How so?
Absolutely. So you have officers who wave at you because they know you because of who I am in the community. But then in other instances, I sit back and look at them, and officers don't speak to half of the people that are up there. They won't walk up to them. They don't say how they're doing. Especially after McLean's death, which is very touching for everybody. We spent 2 weeks up there from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. And it was a lot of officers sitting up there and watching and looking around. And here's the thing, and here's what I respect. One officer stopped and said, "Hey, we're here to protect you guys, just looking out for you guys." And the community was like, "Well, if you're here to protect us, come out here with us." It didn't happen. And so that's the thing that we have to really start recognizing, is that if you're going to connect with the community, if you're going to be a part of the community, if you're going to work in the community, then you have to find ways to connect with the community. You have to find ways to bridge the gap.
Okay. Well, definitely. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about events around the park. I want to welcome Esprit in. Esprit, how you doing?
I'm well, Brother James.
Good.
How are you?
Again, thank you for making yourself available. You have a very
Absolutely.
powerful voice. You spoke well in documentary Thorns on the Rose. So I look forward to sharing that
Thank you. Thank you for that.
with folks. So, I mean, you live in the area. I mean, like right across the street from the park.
Literally right across the street.
What made you decide
I just
to live across the street from the park?
It was kind of a lack of options at the moment. I needed to move, and I did what I could do. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can afford what you can afford. This city is quite pricey.
Mm-hmm.
As Nicole discussed last week about, some of the new things, just, the demographic of the city is shifting.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like, I just got to live here. No. I lived in Pasadena and Altadena for most of my life, minus maybe 3 years. I've never lived in Northwest until the last 3.5 years or so.
What's your experience living in close proximity to the park? Because if we read one report, it says it's out of control. Then another side says this is just members of the community. These are people who live here. What's your experience?
Oh, it's got some interesting days. There's nights that, it's typically weekends or in the summer where there might be noise a little later than people would care for. I know I'm a member of our block association, so I have neighbors that have to be up at 4 a.m., for work. And so, noise till midnight isn't necessarily conducive to having a functional day the next day. By the same token, you've got PPD flying helicopters around at 11:30 every night on the dot, as if somebody's committing a crime at 11:30 every night. So they're way disruptive. But nonetheless, it's a solid community. In the homicide of Anthony McLean, I was able to connect with community members and bridge some of the gaps between the pastors who were available to the community at that time and the members of, residents and other people who, kind of hang out here. And what's across the board, a factor for everybody is not feeling respected. We're not amongst each other.
I mean, what do you mean? Who do you go by?
It's a multi-level thing. Like, there's a lack of regard from law enforcement and from the city, it seems. Brandon discussed some of the things that my brothers were all Malkebula boys choir. I got 6 brothers, all of them sang. So when you have what's shifted to now, the lack of things for kids to do, if you don't play football, you're not gonna, you know what I mean? Like, there's only certain things you can do and you have to be in certain places to do it. I don't think that the same programs are available that were before. Last week, there was discussion about over-policing in Northwest. It's the fact that we're literally being policed and not served or protected necessarily. So even in that, it's like Brandon was saying, it's the officers, in my point of view, don't have ties to our community. Rodney Wallace said, he mentioned earlier, Rodney Diaz from Pasadena, he went to John Muir. You can't, like, he goes to First AME, like, he's been in my life my entire life. So when you have officers like that who are invested in the community and what's best for the community, it matters differently. We don't have officers that, know us and know our families. We don't go to the same churches. And as I'm hearing, a lot of them don't even live, even 2 cities over. Like, you're talking about people that drive an hour to come to work to,
Right. I
do
wanna
their
ask
work
you-
in an area that they don't understand.
I want to ask you a question, Spree, because, and with that in mind, if there were better relationship, you were when Anthony was shot, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
You literally were on scene. Okay.
Yeah.
Events after that, what was your experience and how did that impact you?
The immediate, like that night, or
That night,
the spanning few weeks?
I mean, if you, I don't want to conflate them all into one experience.
No. Immediately, there weren't as many people as, let's say, were at the park the night before. So it was a lesser crowd, but nonetheless, there were people present. My neighbors and I, we all had children. This officer shot Anthony from the park side towards the residential side of the street. So this could have went in anybody's walls, doors, windows, anything. So I felt in that moment disregarded and terrified. And then to witness the response of the people who were here, 10 or 15 people that were in the vicinity to directly witness it or even be confused about what was happening until Anthony was on the ground over here. It was really heartbreaking to watch people just all of us really having to witness it. There wasn't anyone who showed any regard when officers promptly blocked off both sides of the street up at Grandview and down at Washington. There were an immediate, 7 to 12 police cars on our block. And, a lot of time between the time of the gunshots to when the paramedics arrived, it had to be at least, 10 to 15 minutes just to sit in that anguish and terror. My daughter, being 7 years old, is police presence. When I was her age, I didn't feel like police were to be afraid of. They were believed to be something you should aspire to be, to help people, to protect people and things of that sort. And then here's my child feeling like if the police are here, somebody's going to die. The trauma in and of that, and then, I stood outside until the yellow tape was removed, until the people in the park weren't in the park anymore. It was 1 a.m. So you got people who were stuck in the middle of a crime scene, terrorized. Someone was tased. A child pepper spray, like all of that happened. And my neighbors and I stood outside and continued to watch. There was no regard for the people who just lost their friend. There was no regard for the people that live here, and for them to stand here and demonize the victim and the witnesses for being just blatantly disregarded and treated less than animals was ridiculous. And I lost a whole lot of respect for law enforcement in our city in that moment.
What was needed? What do you think was needed at that time?
Compassion.
And if the relationship was better, do you think if there was that familiarity that we were talking about earlier, do you think that, I don't know, I can't say it would change the events, but do you think it would have changed what you and your neighbors experienced?
Even if not that night, it was a continued disregard. There weren't resources available to the witnesses whether they live here or not. There wasn't anyone that reached out to people. Black Lives Matters and pastors showed up the next morning. That was beautiful. My mother's pastor was out of town. Her husband was here. And the first thing I stated was, there were like 6 pastors when I looked out my window at 9 this morning, just walking up to people in the park that were sitting here and asking if they could pray with them. Like, that was powerful. The city didn't do that. PPD didn't do that. To date, there hasn't been an apology or an expression of any type of condolence or concern. And,
well, I mean, there was the memorial in the way of the tree.
Yeah, that's So there's that. But before that happened, there was a removal of the memorial 2 days in a row that, city workers were forced, because they're union, to come remove it. I've got a childhood friend that was a part of the team of people that was forced to remove it. And those people are people that are part of the same community. These are people that have ties. Like, they grew up here too. So you're forcing them to step on this sacred space, this space that the community has to honor and reflect on someone that was taken from us. I didn't know Anthony. Let me say that for the record. I didn't know him. Not related to him. He's not my friend. He's not anyone I met before. When I walked out the next day and looked at his eyes in a picture on a tree, I said, this is not somebody that was supposed to die that way. There's a light in his eyes. I don't care. Like, you know what I've learned living here? I've learned that gangbanging and association is circumstantial and for survival. People are going to do what they have to do to make it. Nobody wakes up as a kid who goes, I want to grow up and do this. No. You're looking at a lack of a lot of things here that lead to a lifestyle choice.
Brandon, I want to bring you back and just hold tight, Esprit. Brandon, I want to bring you back. When the issue of self-accountability and community responsibility, the tribal things that are happening in community. I mean, is it a gang problem? Is it a lack of gang intervention? Like, where is all of this coming from?
Here's the thing. I don't think it's a gang problem, and I don't think it's a gang intervention problem. I think we have a lack of resource problem. And that's what it is. You hear me say it time after time again. All the youth programs that I've been a part of, you had to have had a certain GPA to be in these youth programs. So what about the kids who don't follow under that certain GPA? What do you have for them?
Right.
And so it's a lack of resources. It's a lack. I mean, when Anthony McLean passed away, there was nobody coming up there saying, hey, we have therapists, we have counselors to come talk to you. What I did was I run a program in LA County, and I brought some of my therapists that works under me to come to the park. And if anybody needed, we talked to Jasmine, we talked to other people. If they needed therapy or a counselor or somebody to talk to, that's who they did. And, I did that on my own resources, but it wasn't available to the community. So there is a lack of what we say resources. Now, let me say this, because let's be honest, there are a host of youth programs that we have in the city of Pasadena that are great programs, but none of our kids are going to these programs. So we have all these programs that are great programs that our kids are not attending because maybe they don't want to attend, maybe it doesn't meet their needs. And so let's really go back to the root of it, is that we have to start hiring people who knows how to connect with our people, with our community, with our people that are in our parks, with people that are in our recreation centers, because everybody is not kid friendly. Let me say that again. everyone is not kid friendly. And so it's not just about the programs that we put in there, but it's also about the people that we hire to run these programs too. And so we have to literally start dealing in the root cause of all these, of everything that we're looking at. And so, yes, it's programming. Yes, it's accountability. And I'll keep saying this too. We have to keep holding all right. We have to keep holding our elected officials.
Can I say something? You guys are getting rated. Please make a new meeting. You guys are gonna get rated.
Hey,